It's the reorg, but it's also a restructure. And it's an opportunity for the agencies to create an organizational chart that actually eliminates bottlenecks. It makes the ability for us to move things through the agencies quicker.
And it's with that understanding of going clear down to the county office. He's walked into those county office, so he's from very high levels clear down to that office level and understanding when he talks about saving steps. He knows where those doors are and the steps that he's talking about.
That was Richard Fordyce, USDA Under Secretary for Farm Production and Conservation, and David Schemm, Kansas FSA State Executive Director. My name is Aaron Harries. This is the Wheats on Your Mind podcast. Wheats on Your Mind is brought to you by the Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Richard Fordyce is a fourth-generation farmer from Missouri who has spent his career moving between the farm and public service. He previously served as Missouri Director of Agriculture and as Administrator of the USDA Farm Service Agency before being appointed Under Secretary for Farm Production and Conservation. In that role, he oversees FSA, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and the Risk Management Agency, the three agencies that touch Kansas wheat producers most directly through commodity programs, conservation programs, crop insurance, and farm loans. David Schemm was appointed by the Trump administration as State Executive Director for the USDA Farm Service Agency in Kansas on May 5, 2025. A Kansas wheat producer himself, David previously served as president of both the Kansas Association of Wheat Growers and the National Association of Wheat Growers. Thanks to both of you for joining me on this episode of the podcast.
Well, Aaron, it is great to be here. I love podcasts, and I really love a podcast that I can share with David Schemm.
Well, he's got a good voice for podcasts. He gives us some good information and has a lot to share when he's on here. So.
Well, I'm obviously feeling no pressure, and Richard actually, I think, sets the bar for all of us here. So,
well, before we get into some policy and things like that, we want to learn more about you. You're a fourth-generation Missouri farmer. So, how'd you end up from Missouri to where you are today?
Well, that's a little bit of a story, but I will tell a very quick story about the fourth-generation farmer piece. So I was a full-time farmer, corn, soybeans, wheat, and beef cattle in northwest Missouri, and I'd been involved a lot in Farm Bureau, soybean checkoff, really for 25 years, both at the state and the national level, and then a lot of work with soil conservation efforts. And it apparently caught the notice of the governor of the state of Missouri at the time because he asked if I had an interest in serving as the director of the Missouri Department of Agriculture. And after some consideration, decided to do that. So this was in 2013, and the day of the announcement, the governor wanted to do that on a farm, and so we did it on a farm south of St. Joe, Missouri, and the media were there. And this is right about the time when folks were interested in how many generation farmer you were. And so I had a reporter who stuck a microphone in my face, and they said, "So what generation farmer are you?" And so just, I was a little under pressure, needed to answer that question. I was counting. It's me, my dad, my grandpa, my great-grandpa. I must be fourth generation. So I said I was fourth generation. It went out over the airwaves that day, the day of the announcement, and I had probably 20 calls from uncles, cousins, a whole bunch of folks who said, "What do you mean fourth generation? You're probably 8 or 9 generation." But since it was for the record, and I said I was a fourth generation farmer, we're just going to go with that. We'll go with I'm a fourth generation farmer.
Roughly.
Yeah.
So tell us about the family farm. Still in operation?
It is. I'm in a little bit of an interesting spot as the Undersecretary for Farm Production and Conservation. That is a Senate-confirmed position. And so because of that and because of, I guess, some of the decisions that we make, at the Undersecretary level, I had to divest of my farming operation. And basically what that meant for us was creating an operating company that could operate the farm, and my wife and I not have any part of any management, any marketing, any of the decisions, or any revenue or loss of revenue from that farming operation. So my 2 adult children and one of the guys that has worked for us for 30 years now operate the operating company and operate the farm. Corn, soybeans, wheat, probably it's, we don't have a 3-way rotation. It's probably, 2/3 of that is a corn, soybean rotation, and then we'll mix wheat in kind of where it makes sense. And then a cow-calf, commercial cow-calf operation, around, it varies year to year, but around 200 mother cows. And then we market the majority of those calves as feeders, and we do a heifer retention program as well.
So not only Missouri Director of Agriculture, you've been the FSA Administrator and now Under Secretary. So you've seen this industry through a lot of different lenses, and now you've reached that point in the Under Secretary. So how has that prepared you? And I'd like to know, how do you stay right in front of the farmer at the level you're at and connect with the state offices such as David? What's the best way to do that?
Well, I've actually been doing this all day. I've been with David all day, but I really just want to throw a huge compliment his way. We're very fortunate that he agreed to come back and be the State Executive Director for Kansas FSA. Again, in this administration, I don't probably get in contact with him enough to see what's going on the ground in Kansas, but I can guarantee you, if there's something that I need to know about what's going on in Kansas, he will call. He has my personal cell phone number, and he uses it. So that's a good thing, right? But I would say, those other jobs, before this one, I think prepared me from a culture standpoint. And what I mean by that is when you've been a self-employed farmer, all your life, and that has been your focus 100%, moving into a leadership role within a government agency is a different thing. There are certainly processes and things that we have to do to get a regulation through, to implement a program. And you have to change how you're thinking about how to do that. Because if it's me on my farm, in my personal farm business, I make the decision, I pay the consequences if it was a bad one, I reap the rewards if it was a good one, I do my own research. So it's the things that I decide to do, I'm either going to get rewarded or I'm going to get penalized. And it's doing it on your own, really. I mean, obviously, you've got a lot of advisors and you've got a lot of folks that help inform that decision, but ultimately, that decision is yours. In these roles, the decision is partially yours. And what I mean by that is that, we have considerations toward congressional intent. What does Congress, they pass us a new program, or they, the One Big Beautiful Bill is an example. There were a lot of things in that bill that required implementation. And so, we have the you shalls in that bill. And so those are pretty straightforward, and that's the direction you march. But then you have opportunities to make discretionary decisions. And, when we're making those discretionary decisions, certainly, the first audience that we're going to solicit some input from are organizations like Kansas Wheat, right? If it's a wheat-based program. We also touch base with Congress, right? Like, is this the intent? This is the direction we're headed. Is this the intent? And that can be done in a lot of different ways, certainly. And then you have the department itself, right? So we have a deputy secretary, we have a secretary. Secretary Rollins, is fantastic, and she's a great partner. She's wonderful to work with, as is Deputy Secretary Vaden. And so if it's something of a little higher level, I probably am not making that decision in a vacuum. So I think the earlier jobs just really, you're a state director of a state Department of Agriculture, and then an administrator of a federal agency, and now undersecretary. I think it was really a kind of a perfect progression that I didn't realize I was going through at the time, to be able to know how to navigate the federal government implementing programs. So, we've got a great team at USDA at headquarters, both on the political side and on the career side. We've got folks within all three of the agencies that are in the farm production and conservation mission area that, they've been there, they've done that, and they are 100% passionate about agriculture. They know why they're there. They know who we serve, and just do a wonderful job.
David.
Aaron, I was going to chime in here. It's, from my perspective, it's been truly not just an honor, but really a joy to serve underneath Richard, the Undersecretary here, because you can hear it even in his answer here, and even he mentioned it, the passion there. And he's right. A lot of times, especially on his level, even on my level from the state, sometimes there's stuff that we want to do or move forward with there, but we can't do it. And so we're working constantly, but it makes it so much easier from my standpoint that I know Richard is up there and he has that same passion for our farmers. I was laughing this morning. I shared with our employees when the Undersecretary was talking with them. I was like, and it's pretty obvious here in this discussion that he has the heart of a farmer. He is a farmer. And I said, the fastest way to start a discussion with a farmer, and it happened, I think, within the first 15 minutes we were talking, is you ask, well, how's the weather?
Yeah.
And every farmer does that. And that's what Richard is. He's a farmer, but he's very passionate.
Well, it's got to help both you gentlemen making the pitch to farmers on programs, doesn't it? That you've been in farmer shoes?
Yeah. From my perspective, Aaron, it absolutely does. And I didn't really get into in my earlier comment, when we have an opportunity to make a discretional decision, it's always going to be farmer first. Now there may be some guardrails around that. There may be some things, maybe some limitations that we can't get all the way to where we'd like to be, but we are certainly going to make decisions based on how it affects farmers and ranchers. And I think if you use that as your North Star, you're probably going to end up in a better place more times than not. And so that's really what we try to do.
David, you and I talked, spent a whole episode talking about the big, beautiful bill and the impact of that. What a timely year, especially for the hard red winter wheat farmer, emphasizing the safety net for the short crop we're having here in the central part of the country. How'd you guys navigate the big, beautiful bill? I mean, it was far from standard, wasn't the method of the Farm Bill, but how'd you have to navigate and adjust to that? Go ahead.
Well, I just think from our standpoint here, there's been a lot of changes associated with that one big beautiful bill, Working Families Tax Cut Act, as it's been kind of renamed there. And so many of it are huge impacts that we're seeing. One of the things, just was talking with the Undersecretary here earlier, was the base acre allocation that we're going through. And it was a huge lift for Kansas here and, has a potential, probably to make a pretty good impact for a lot of our producers out there and its workload. But it's just amazing to me from our standpoint. And Richard, the Undersecretary, is very attuned to the impact that it's making. He realizes that, he understands that what we're trying to work through, both from an employee standpoint, serving as a state director briefly there in Missouri, so he understands the workload, but also from a farmer standpoint there. So from an FSA, from our standpoint here, it's been a lot of work, but we've been getting it done, and that's what's just been incredible. And like he said, that is due to some incredible employees that we have across the state, across the nation.
Mm-hmm. I don't think in my lifetime, without getting too political here, I've heard an administration talk about farming and agriculture as much as this administration has. How different has that been for the job that you do?
The president has been working very hard on trade deals, a lot of things here domestically, and I think I said one time he was coming back, I think from his first China trip, and he was on Air Force One, and a reporter asked him a question about how the trip went. And he uttered a sentence that had the word soybeans and sorghum. And I told people, I'll bet you he is the first U.S. president that uttered a sentence that had the word soybean and sorghum. So yeah, it's a farmer first for sure administration.
We talked before, David, about some of the staffing reductions at FSA and office consolidations. Was an announcement this morning from USDA about the Foreign Ag Service relocating to Kansas City. There's been some concerns about it. Richard, this is your chance to chime in and tell us how that's going to go and what concerns, or if any, farmers should have.
I think the reorg, the restructure. So, it's two things. It's the reorg, but it's also a restructure. And it's an opportunity for the agencies to create an organizational chart that actually eliminates bottlenecks. It makes the ability for us to move things through the agencies quicker, respond quicker, frankly, to natural disasters. And I really think that, the effort that the president and the secretary and the deputy secretary are undertaking with the reorg is getting folks that are serving farmers closer, physically closer to farmers. I would say that our mission area is probably more unique than any of the other mission areas within USDA, because we're almost 98% of the folks that work in the farm production and conservation mission area are already dispersed out across the country. So, we're not probably going to see a great disruption, of folks. We just don't have that many in Washington. And the folks that are there across the agencies, They're the ones that are implementing the Working Families Tax Cut Act. They're the ones that are implementing, the ad hoc programs like the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program, and that work can be done there. The other thing that I would say about Farm Production and Conservation's reorg is that it will have no effect on the operations of the county offices. It will have no effect on the operations of the state offices. So I think that's good news.
And you're implementing some efficiencies, David, we talked about before, like the one farmer, one file. I mean, that's got to be a relief for the people that work for you.
Well, absolutely. And I definitely, the Undersecretary will go very passionate on this, as he should. Very exciting when we start talking about technology and the ability to start to get the work done that we need. And we are getting work done out there. We're delivering those programs to the producers now, but the efficiency gains that we're going to be able to have. The other day, it was funny. I had the opportunity to present to groups there. And one of my favorite slides I always like to show is my son has his big John Deere four-wheel drive tractor, and I've got a slide of it, and right parked next to it is my granddad's 820 John Deere that he bought brand new in 1954. And I told those people, from my perspective, I love that tractor. I restored it. For some of the listeners that are familiar, it's got the little pony motor on it, and it's got the 2-lung diesel, pop, the Johnny Poppers as they called them, everything like that. And I looked and told all those people, I am not going to go plant wheat with that 820 because that big four-wheel drive tractor has air conditioning and auto steer, and it has all of that. And so from an FSA perspective, we need to get FSA into the 21st century to be able to deliver our producers. And with that, I'm going to let the Undersecretary, because I know how passionate he is about this, and let him talk.
Yeah, well, thanks, David. And I think that's a great analogy, and I may borrow that again in the future. The one farmer, one file really is a number of things. First of all, our hope is that we're going to be able to really audit and inventory forms that people are signing. And if you're working with FSA, you're going to sign some eligibility form. If you're working with NRCS, you're going to sign some type of eligibility form. Working with your crop insurance agent, you're going to sign some kind of an eligibility form. I firmly believe, and it's going to take a little bit of time, and we just frankly haven't had that time with all the things that have been going on. We're going to take a look at those and see if we can consolidate forms, right? And so it just makes a lot of sense. We'll have a few policy changes that we'll need to address related to that. But the big part of the one farmer, one file that is so exciting is an end-to-end IT modernization. And it depends on who you ask and who's counting, but we have between 100 and 300 disparate IT systems within those three agencies. Some of those could be over 20 years old. And so we've discovered a partner, they're called Palantir. They get what we do. They get how we've been doing things and how we want to do things, in the future. And so they've been a great partner. And so they've rolled up their sleeves and they've went to work. And, we're probably, to see the end of the one farmer, one file IT modernization, we're probably 18 months out yet to finalizing that. But there's a number of things within that when we start to be able to clean up all of this mess. I mean, there's systems that don't talk to one another. There are systems at NRCS that need to inform FSA that don't talk to one another. That's why, folks in that local county office get so many steps in a day. It's because they're walking back and forth from office to office. So the idea is to have basically all of the data on one platform where the FSA employee, the NRCS employee, the crop insurance agent can have a view of the things that they need to see, right? We're not opening the curtains and showing everybody everything in real time. So if you do an acreage report, and I'll talk real quickly about the acreage reporting modernization because that is super exciting. But if you do an acreage report at FSA and you're done with it at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, your crop insurance agent can see that at 10:01 on Tuesday morning. And it's in real time. And it's just what you just filed. And I would say one more thing about data security. I've had farmers say, well, gosh, you're working with Palantir. That's a multinational company. Is my data secure? And my answer is we've been able to secure your data for decades using antiquated systems that probably, and I don't know this, but probably have some vulnerabilities that this new platform will not have, right? It's easier to protect, like if you have a house with one door, it's a whole lot easier to keep people out of your house if you have one door than it is if you have 6 doors in your house. So the data security piece I am 100% confident that it's going to be great. The modernized acreage reporting piece is probably the one that I'm most excited about, and that is because currently, if you are going to make an acreage report at the local FSA office, we are still handing you a photocopied paper map and a pencil, and we're asking you to write in those CLUs what the crop is and what date you planted it. The new platform is based on a geospatial mapping platform. It's interactive, that represents your farm like it looks today. So you'll be able to go in. The one thing that we are going to have folks do in the first phase is they will have to go to the local county office. They'll have to interact with the map and a program analyst that's there in the office and be able to identify those fields. We may not be farming them like that. We'll be able to split fields, change the boundaries, change the borders. Once that foundational work's done, then that'll be your record as the producer operating that farm. And you tap on that field and it'll give you a crop code option, and we'll refine that based on where we are, who you are, what you're growing. So you're not going to see, all 350 crop codes, but what's actually growing in your part of the world. If it's corn, you click on corn. If it's wheat, you click on wheat. And then there'll be a calendar that'll pop up and you'll click on the date that you seeded that wheat. Where the time savings is going to happen for the producer and for the employee in the FSA office is once you've completed that action of selecting the crop and selecting the date, that data is entered. Nobody has to enter it. There is no data entry that happens after that. And so that'll be phase one. Phase two, once this foundational work is done, is you'll get a notice when it's close to time to do acreage reporting. You'll get a notice, however you choose to be notified, and you'll be able to actually do your acreage report on your phone. It won't even require a trip to the office. And then phase three, which is the one I'm most excited about, is the ability to import precision ag data to inform the acreage report. So I tell people every time you're folding your planter up and moving to another field, you could, if you wanted, if you had the right permissions clicked, you could literally be doing your acreage report as you're planting. When you're all done, you can go in and look at it, make sure the data was received correctly, and your acreage report's done.
What an amazing overhaul. So overdue. And David, you've got to be you being in your second term as state administrator, you've got to be excited to see this coming into reality.
Thank you so much to the Secretary and the Under Secretary. FSA is now going to get auto steer on our tractor. So we're incredibly excited about this. This is where, obviously, when you talk about visionary leadership, that's what it's about, and this is where we're headed. And it's with that understanding of going clear down to the county office. The Undersecretary knows his county office people. He's walked into those county office, so he's from very high levels clear down to that office level and understanding when he talks about saving steps. He knows where those doors are and the steps that he's talking about. So it's very exciting with what we're hearing, and employees are very excited.
Before we wrap up in respect to FSA, but we shouldn't overlook the fact that, Richard, you also cover RMA, and so the alignment of the commodity title and insurance programs, you get to merge that picture together. So if you had, where are areas you still think need strengthening between those two entities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think, I hate to go back to this IT modernization, but, Secretary Perdue is the one that actually created the Farm Production and Conservation Mission Area by bringing NRCS into the original mission area to create the mission area with the three most farmer-facing agencies. And I don't know that we realized the advantages or the efficiencies of that in the first Trump term, just because we were still trying to figure out, the differences between NRCS and FSA and RMA. But with the IT modernization, where everybody that needs to have a look at that farmer's file to do the work for that farmer, to serve that farmer, that in real time, and the ability to understand what's happening on the land, to be able to understand where they can insert themselves when asked, right, I think is a game changer. Days of, and I'm not going to say this is going to happen overnight, but the days of walking into an NRCS office or an FSA office, and a stack of folders on the corner of everybody's desk, 2 feet tall. I think we're going to see that come to an end, because we don't need file folders. We don't need to sift through paper. We don't need to find David Schemm's file to see if he's in compliance with his conservation plan, because that'll be in a real-time view. I would say, on the RMA side, we've got a wonderful administrator, Pat Swanson. Talk about farmers. She's a farmer from Tumwa, Iowa, and has been a crop insurance agent for 20-some years. She is laser focused. I mean, laser focused on looking at the products that we have available. And obviously we're really good at Title I crops. Where we're probably a little weaker would be more in that specialty crop area. And she's laser focused on figuring out ways to get products in front of the FCIC board for approval for specialty crops, tweaking existing programs that will better serve farmers. And it's really exciting to work with Pat because she is so, I'm passionate about all my kids. RMA is her baby, and she understands it. She gets it. Ken Selzer is the deputy administrator, fellow Kansan. And so when you get Ken and Pat talking about crop insurance and ways we can make it better, you just better get out of the way, right? And let them just give you an update occasionally and keep you in the loop because they're doing a great job.
Well, this is all exciting. You folks, you're both farmers. Your employees are in the front line of farmers. It's tough times right now. I mean, economy-wise, input cost-wise. What's the mood out there in farmland right now?
I think from my perspective, and you're exactly right, don't worry, when wheat drops 20 cents or corn drops 50 cents, I hear from Clay, my son, he's not particularly happy, or if he's, having to get some of the inputs in, whether it's fertilizer or fuel or anything like that, I hear about it too. So I feel that, Richard knows that firsthand too. We know the challenges there, but that's what helps to just build the passion that we know what we need to get done to help those farmers out there. But the mood that I'm really getting in is that I really do feel that mood out there is we're in challenging times. They're facing challenges there, but they see the light at the end of the tunnel. The trade deals, the amount of work that the Secretary is doing out there, and the possibility of new trade coming in from not just the China, but it's the Indias, it's all these other places. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. The thing is, it's not dim. It's really bright. And I think, the president was even making comments the other day there up in Wisconsin. What was it, along the lines of give me 90 days or along that there. But I think what farmers need to realize is that light, she's a coming fast. And I think we really are seeing good times and better times for our row crop guys out there. Beef prices, our beef guys, they are in a great time, and they well deserved. There's been challenging times before that, and so they're there. So I see, challenges now, but optimism in the future.
Secretary Fordyce, I will give you the last word.
Well, thank you, Aaron, and thank you, David. This has been so much fun sitting around the table having a chat. I echo what David just said. The folks that I talk to, they certainly understand that we're in a little bit of a stressful time. When you actually do your crop budget and we all do those conservatively, right? And they're probably pink to red, right? But, we hope we can save a little money here, save a little money there. I'm going to use a conservative yield when I'm doing my budgets. And so hopefully that I'm above that yield. But there is, I think there is some, I don't know if angst is the word, but David said it probably as well as I've ever heard it. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's a bright light. I do think that this administration is laser focused on not only near term, looking at ways to assist American agriculture, but I think long term. And some of those things that they talked about that the Secretary's been talking about for a couple of weeks is really a major effort to onshore more nitrogen production. We are a net exporter now. The U.S. is a net exporter of natural gas. Natural gas is the key component to nitrogen production. We've got the feedstock in this country. Let's make that nitrogen here. And then I think, David said it as well, just real focus on adding to existing trade deals, creating new trade deals. And I will tell you that I did hear the other day, I was traveling with the Under Secretary for Trade, Luke Lindbergh, and Luke said something that really resonated with me, and I guess I hadn't really been listening or paying attention as much as I should have. But he said, what's different about this time, this administration, this U.S. trade rep, is that agriculture is on the table in every deal. There was a time when agricultural issues, sanitary, phytosanitary, non-tariff trade barriers, those kinds of things were just too hard. So they pulled agriculture out of a trade deal, but they kept Boeing, they kept airplanes, they kept cars, they kept other things. This administration says, no, agriculture is going to be a part of this trade. I think that is really promising.
Gentlemen, thank you for your service, and thank you for sharing some good news today. Some really positive things coming down the line. What's that website?
Farmers.gov.
Farmers.gov. I can remember that now. So, Richard Fordyce, USDA Under Secretary for Farm Production and Conservation, and my friend David Schemm, Kansas FSA State Executive Director. Thanks for joining us on the Wheats on Your Mind podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks to Richard Fordyce and David Schemm for being guests on this episode of the podcast. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, please share it with your friends and subscribe. You can find previous episodes on wheatsonyourmind.com.